Michigan football has yet a new starting quarterback coming up this Saturday, and that's Jack Tuttle, who is the guy that we spoke about all offseason as being the guy that we thought was going to end up being the starter, not Alex Orji. So now that he's actually getting his opportunity in the latter half of the 2024 season, let's look a little bit deeper into Jack Tuttle. We'll do that here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Not on the ground right now. I am currently missing a press conference, and I know I said no podcast today, but I think I'm getting a little stir crazy after this is day, I think, 11 or 12. I've lost track of being sick, and I decided that I can speak well enough to do a show. So that's what we're going to do, even if it sounds absolutely absurd. So let's dig into together to Jack Tuttle and a little bit of what he brings to the table. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound like this, but this is where we are. This is the best we can do right now. So I wanted to start off by kind of just looking at who Jack Tuttle is, because I feel like a lot of people maybe don't recognize exactly who he is as a player and all of these kind of things. We'll delve into stats and some of these other things. But you've heard me say, going back to the spring ball, that Jack Tuttle, being a former four-star, that Michigan looked at him as being like, hey, he is a lot better than people think, and he's just had to wait his turn behind Michael Penix and J.J. McCarthy, the number 9 and number 10 picks in this most recent NFL draft. Now, at that time that I was even told that, the draft hadn't happened yet. They just said 2 first-round draft guys. And that's that. They ended up being back-to-back, right? And if you don't know exactly about his ranking, I'm looking at 24/7 Sports. He was a 4-star in 2018. That's how long ago it was. Think about 2018. Aiden Hutchinson, Mike Barrett, Jake Moody, Ronnie Bell. Like, those are the guys that Michigan brought in 2018. So it's been a long time. He's from Mission Hills High School in San Marcos, California. Weirdly, I'm just kind of like, San Marcos, I believe, is more north. I don't know why I'm doing that. Oh, it's actually south. It's San Diego County, California. That's right. He went to the same high school as Chris Olave, I think. Anyway, that's just my own curiosity getting the better of me here. He ended up committing to Utah, where he early enrolled, but he was the 24/7 Sports proprietary had him as the number 110 player in the country, the number 7 pro-style quarterback, and number 15 player in the state of California. In the composite, he was 167, 8, and 25 by those same metrics. Just to take a look a little bit at those other people who were in that class. Let's see if I can do it by rankings here, by pro-style quarterbacks. I know we've done this before, but we're just going to do it again. All right, so like I said, he's number 7. He's weirdly one of these other players is still playing. Actually, probably more than one. But Trevor Lawrence was the number 1 quarterback of that class. Then JT Daniels, Tanner McKee from Stanford. I've never heard of that guy. Maybe he was good and I just didn't pay attention. Same with Jaron Williams, Matt Corral, who ended up supplanting Shea Patterson at Ole Miss. Tyler Schuff. You remember that name? He was a guy that was on Michigan's radar for a while. Ended up at Oregon initially. Now he's at Louisville. I think he was at Texas Tech for a minute too. And then Jack Tuttle. And then behind him, guys like Jacob Sermon, Theo Day. There's a lot of guys that just haven't really I always use this wrong, but I guess matriculated is kind of partially the right way to use that here. Artur Sitkowski, Joe Milton was Michigan's quarterback. He was 15th in that class. Jack Plummer, Spencer Petras was 20. Sam Hartman was 21. Will Levis was 23. Brock Purdy was 24. Zach Wilson was 25. Cam Rising, who's probably going to get an 8th year is 26th. So you kind of have to go down the list to find the guys that actually ended up being pretty good. Penix, who actually ended up being the guy who started over him, 36th ranked quarterback in that class. Alan Bowman still playing, obviously former Michigan guy. He was 41st in that class. So that just kind of tells you what that this class, it was great with number one, and behind number one it wasn't as good, and that's in the top 24/7. He was ranked 8th in terms of the composite, but he had offers from a lot of those top schools. He had an Alabama offer. He ended up committing to Utah, as I said, and he transferred from Utah to Indiana. But he had an Alabama offer, an LSU offer, a USC offer. So not a lot of offers. I mean, quarterbacks don't always have a ton of offers, but he was a guy that, as a recruit, had a lot of interest in him. Didn't seem to get evaluated very heavily. Doesn't have anything in the scouting report. He was won the Elite 11 finals that year. So he did make that, at least the group that went out to Los Angeles. I mean, just a short drive for him, depending on traffic, of course. There were other quarterbacks that I didn't mention. I went with the pro style. Justin Fields was the dual threat, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So there was a couple others here, but that were also guys who went out there. So that's who Jack Tuttle is as a recruit. What did he do afterwards? Let's get into the stats as well as some of the PFF. I think we'll do PFF in segment 3. We're going to try to keep this relatively short for obvious reasons. So we will continue on here in just a moment. But before we do, I got to tell you a little something about Roy. Okay, Locked On Wolverines fans. So far this season, we've pooled over $10,000 support players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to massive change. And with the Roy app, you can direct your support to athletes that you love, ensuring that all funds go to the specific player that you choose. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part is it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. So there's all of that. Remember, you can pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets up your team for success, rather. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. You can win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download, and there's 2 great games in November for Michigan. Just download Roy, create an account, and you enter the referral code Locked On, and you're entered. Already on Roy, any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Download Roy now to join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_return_on_you for more info. Roy, support the players, change the game. I'll tell you what, with my voice like this, I almost feel like starting to just throw out some Ocean's 11's George Clooney quotes here. Because that's what, at least in my head, that's what it sounds like. Probably not. I know I also sound, this is kind of how my dad sounds, so it's a little jarring for me. My dad's name is Barry, and he is a very large black man with long hair and a voice deep like this. So it's funny because it's like, the dude is Barry White, but he's not. I didn't articulate that very well. Not operating at super high capacity, folks. But I wanted to bring you something, and I felt like this was an easy thing to execute in my condition, in my state, without getting like fired up, because I cannot really make good on being fired up or hyped right now. All right, so let's talk about what Jack Tuttle has done. Let's go and look at what his passing and rushing looked like. So 2018, he initially was at Utah. He transferred from Utah to Indiana in 2019, where he got 5 games under his belt. And it was kind of a mixed bag, right? And He went 3 for 7 against Eastern Illinois. That's 42.9%, 18 yards. Not a lot going. The next week against Ohio State, 1 for 2 for 4 yards. The next week, UConn, 1 for 1 for 5 yards. Technically played against Northwestern. Didn't register any passing stats. He actually completed a pass against Michigan in 2019. Again, that was the penultimate week of the season, 2019. You think of that game. I can't even remember that game. Oh yeah, that was the Nico Collins game. 1 for 1 for 7 yards. So it wasn't exactly like he was achieving much. So 6 for 11 on the year for 34 yards, no touchdowns. Didn't achieve much. 2020, Michael Penix obviously had a really good go for a while, got injured against Ohio State. And then, or maybe it was the next week against Maryland that he got injured. Tuttle went 5 for 5 for 31 yards against Maryland. At Wisconsin, he gets the start. 13 of 22 for 130 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Gets to play in the bowl game. And they really asked him to do a lot in terms of attempts. Not as much far going downfield. 26 for 45. 57.8% of his passes were completed for 201 yards. That's an average of 4.5 yards per. They lost that game 26-20. He had an interception in that game. But they did ask him to throw the ball a ton. So that at least, obviously, like in that game, he's got more attempts than in just one game than Alex Orji's had, I believe, in his entire career at this point. So he certainly has the attempts factor. He's been called upon to do the same thing again later. He had little experience to start 2021 and then ended up having to start a couple games. And one of these games was one that I watched because obviously Michael Penix was dealing with a lot of injury issues. Still kind of hadn't gotten to that point where you could really feel like you could trust him. But he was 0 for 2 against Iowa in week 1 in a loss, 2 for 4 against Idaho in a win. Didn't play the next 2 games, 6 for 12 against Penn State in a 24-0 loss, 77 yards, 1 interception, not great. In a loss to Michigan State, which is the game that I remember watching, 28 for 52, 53.8%, 188 yards, so 3.6 yards per play. Not great. 2 interceptions, 4 for 7 against Ohio State. Didn't register any stats against Maryland, didn't play against Michigan, 5 for 10 against Rutgers for 26 yards. So some of this is kind of scary given what you are hoping to get out of him. But in 2022, he only had 1 game and he had to play against Penn State. This is when Connor Bazelak was their quarterback. They lost this game, but he was 9 for 12 for 82 yards. So throwing a little bit more downfield, had 1 touchdown. Didn't play the rest of the year. You move on to his Michigan career. He appeared in 6 games, but really only had 4 games where he registered any stats. And he completed 88.2% of his passes. So he did a heck of a lot better when called upon in some of these games where he wasn't asked to come in once the game was handled, of course. 3 for 4 against Nebraska. He didn't score a touchdown himself, but he engineered that drive where they scored a kind of late touchdown. 2 for 2 against Minnesota. Same deal. 5 for 5 against Indiana with a touchdown. Again, the yards aren't much there. 23, 22, 22. And then against Michigan State, 5 for 6 for 63 yards. And again, didn't score a touchdown there as far as through the air. But then this year, obviously, he's only got the 1 game so far with 98 yards, 10 for 18 for 98 yards, 5.4 yards. So those are the stats. Let's get into the advanced analytics and just kind of how he graded out. We'll do that here in just a moment. But before we do, hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, so obviously not like he has some experience. Not all experience is good experience in terms of the production, but all experience is good experience in terms of you get better at football by playing football. So, so far he has one game under his belt, and this year, and did not grade out great according to PFF. 42.8 grade, 51.6 in the pass, 41.3 in the run. But last year he was called upon late. That was his best year in terms of grades, 76, even 67.6 in the pass, 74.8 in the run. And the year before he only played in one game and did very well. But he's got 268 passing snaps, but a total of, I should say 268 attempted passes. He has 525 snaps that he's been out there. So he's got a lot of experience. So it's just a matter of him making the most of his experience in terms of that. In terms of passing pressure, and I'm looking at 2022, I should probably up this because it's not necessarily going to give me a ton here. Let's go to 2021 because that's the year he played the most. Obviously did not do great under pressure in terms of the pass, 27.6 grade there. But when it came to the run, he was very good, 67.9. When he's not blitzed, in the run, 79.4. The pass is okay at 44.7. Kept clean, 54.9. But that's his basically overall grade. So and then you look at 2023, that under pressure, he's still not great. I mean, what quarterback really is? His offensive grade is 61.9, so kind of in that like yellow area. It's when he passed last year, it was 47.4, but the run was 69.9. He was very good under pressure with the run and understanding when to take advantage. Obviously, he got injured in that Indiana game. I think it was maybe it was Rutgers last year. When he took off on that one. So when not blitzed, though, offensively, 83.2 grade. So this was, again, last year. And just looking at what he did so far this year, under pressure, pass was actually 65.7. So he was a lot more poised. But because he fumbled on the one play, his offensive grade, his fumble grade, his run grade all kind of fell pretty strongly. So there's a lot to look at when it comes to what he's able to do here. As far as, let's look again back at 2021, because that's the year that he played the most. Screen passes were his bread and butter. That's where he really did the best. He was 12 for 12 on screen passes, which, I mean, it's a screen pass. You hope that's about that. 67.4 grade there. And then play action, he was surprisingly not as good as you would have thought. 11 for 21, and a grade of 46.5, and just basically on no screens. 33 for 75, a 35.1 passing grade. That's, again, 2021. Let's look at 2023. Again, he had 4 games at Michigan, only 20 snaps, essentially 20 dropbacks rather. And it was just a lot better. He was better again on the no play action overall, 75.8. So that kind of tells you what, it's kind of funny because you would expect him to be better on play action in Michigan's system, but he was better when it was just a straight called pass, straight drop back. So it'll be interesting to see what he's able to do. As far as that's concerned. Looking at last year, the intermediate center is where he was the best. And he was pretty good on the short and also the screens. Didn't attempt anything that was deep. But let's look back again at 2021. The deep right was where he was best. Although he was only 1 of 5, he had a high grade there. Intermediate center was not his best while he was at Indiana. Short left continued to be one of his best places that he was able to go. So that just kind of at least gives you a little bit of a snapshot of where he's had some success. But look at 2020 real quick with this same thing. Again, intermediate center wasn't his best, but intermediate right he was 3 for 4. That was where he was really good. Short center, he was 16 of 17. So basically getting that intermediate passing game, short to intermediate, and trying to get the speed and space. I know that's a triggering term. That's probably where you're going to get your best option when it comes to Jack Tuttle and what he's best at. Before I move on, just to 2024, obviously just one game. Intermediate center, he was 1 for 1. That was the 22-yarder to Marion Walker, 74.3 grade there. As far as intermediate right, he was 1 for 2. And then the short passes, he got actually not a great grade at the short center, even though it was 5 for 7, 56.4 grade. Short right was 1 for 1. So that just kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what he's capable of. Now, obviously, you need some guys to step up. You need a Marion Walker who was brought in to be that type of guy. For him to step up. Fred Moore, you hope that we start to see him start being more creative with Samaj Morgan. And I mean, obviously they used him, but it's just to me, it's like I normally am not the biggest proponent of like pre-planning the idea of like, you know, how do you take a look at what you have and say we have to use this. And maybe that's in part because I remember, I'm just going to go ahead and burn this dude. But like Josh Gaddis used to tell me about how Jim Harbaugh would say like, you need X amount of snaps for Ben Mason. Like, and you had to basically check that off. So it's one of those things where it's like, I don't necessarily love that idea in like a general sense, but considering how far back this offense is, to me, it's kind of like, okay, you need eight throws to Colston Loveland. You need, 4 to Donovan Edwards. You need 3 to Samaj Morgan or whatever, however you want to kind of work it out. It's like you almost have to like script a little bit of the game to that degree of like, we have certain things that we're going to use. And I know every team kind of does that in terms of down and distance and game situation and all of that. And part of it is just going to be about playing complementary football and allowing the defense, keeping Luke Altmaier at bay enough to be able to give the offense a chance. So this is going to be, it's funny because every game is like an inflection game, and that's just kind of what this team is. They need this win in kind of the worst way. So they need to find a way to get this win. And then it's like, okay, congratulations. Now you get to play a rival. Congratulations. Now you get to play Oregon. Congratulations. Now you get to play at ranked Indiana. Like, that's just kind of bizarre that those are things that we're talking about right now, but that's where we're at. No real gimmies. I mean, given that we saw Northwestern go to Maryland and just absolutely dominate that game. I mean, no team they don't have UCLA, who even played Minnesota tough. No team is just going to roll over on this entire schedule, which is kind of weird to think like we might not see like a typical Michigan blowout this year. Maybe they do. Maybe they figure things out, and by the time that we get to the end of the year, maybe that Northwestern game, or who knows, maybe that Ohio State game, maybe they just have built an identity enough of being able to stand in what. Because if Michigan had the same team it did last year, I would still feel like, okay, they're going to beat Ohio State. They don't, unfortunately, though. So they have to find a way to build to that and be confident enough in it to execute on that given day. So that is what it is. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you again for bearing with me. I don't know if we'll be back tomorrow or not, because it all just kind of depends on where we're at. Weirdly, I feel like I'm getting a little bit better. Doesn't sound like it. Doesn't necessarily fully feel like it. But it is what it is. All right, we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Peace.